Hey guys, this is a special report from the Jim Acosta Show along with Katie Fang. Katie, great to see you. We have some breaking news to share with everybody here on Substack and YouTube. And that is that the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released new pictures, new photos, and videos from Jeffrey Epstein's island. These photos and videos were apparently obtained from the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Justice, I believe. Is that right, Katie? This is according to an email from the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee led by the ranking member, Robert Garcia. They say they've also received records from J.P. Morgan and Deutsche Bank. Katie, we're just going through these images right now, but I know your time is limited. What's your sense of what we're seeing?
Yeah, so I just want to confirm this is pursuant to a subpoena that was sent to the U.S. Virgin Islands Attorney General for documents, communications, and information pertaining to investigations or potential criminal investigations of Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, turned over by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Justice. And Jim, the reason why this is so important is, one, we get a more intimate look into what some of the rooms and the property look like for Epstein on Epstein Island. Remember, he actually had two islands. He actually owned two islands in the Virgin Islands. But number two, Jim, what the hell is the Department of Justice sitting on then? Remember, they got a subpoena from House Oversight back in August. And if this was in the possession of the DOJ of the Virgin Islands, then this could have been turned over a long ass time ago by Pamela Joe. So this just goes to show that they've been intentionally slow rolling the production of documents to the American public because there's nothing here that needed to be redacted, Jim. There is a picture, I will say, that has redactions. But look, we're looking at videos of the interior of a bathroom. We've also seen photographs of the property, of bedrooms, of bathrooms. And at this point, this could have been given to us months ago.
Yeah, and there's this chalkboard here. Again, these are photos from inside the Epstein Island, or one of the islands, as you were pointing out.
Yeah.
And the chalkboard has a bunch of words, and then there are some redactions on the chalkboard. So presumably the redactions are important. We don't know why they've been redacted, but as we saw with some of these emails that came out recently that the House Oversight Democrats put out, there were redactions, and there are redactions here. There was also, I think, a phone that we saw an image of earlier that had some names on it. There it is right there. Yep. I'm seeing it says New York office, Darren cell. There's some names, but then there are some redacted names.
That's right.
On that phone. And then at the bottom, you see it says kitchen and then JEE. I believe that's Jeffrey Epstein.
Those are his initials.
Those are his initials. And so these are pictures and videos just released by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee from the Epstein Island, the notorious Epstein Island. And Katie, this says to me that the Dems on that committee are putting pressure on the White House. Trump signed this bill to release the Epstein files. We still haven't seen the Epstein files.
December 19th is the due date on that Epstein Transparency Act. And, Jim, I got a boogie here, but I just wanted to say one last thing before I go. I want to know who took these videos and these photographs. We have something called chain of custody when we deal with evidence in litigation, when we deal with cases. What's the chain of custody? Who took these photographs? Who took these videos? Were these investigative law enforcement officers? What was this dealing with? One, because we don't see people in the videos or in the photographs. Number two, I also am interested in seeing what we haven't seen yet, which are the financial records that were turned over by J.P. Morgan and Deutsche Bank. According to House Oversight Dems, they are reviewing those files and will release them to the public very soon. And so I'm grateful, at least, that the pressure is being continued to be placed by the Democrats to make sure that there's transparency on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Katie, you have to bolt, so we'll let you go. But thanks so much for hopping on. Thanks for the expertise. Always appreciate it. If this had just come out a little sooner, I would have had you on a little longer. But just so everybody understands, Katie has to go to something else, so we're not going to let her go. But I'm going to still take the viewers through all of this. We're trying to get Dave Ehrenberg on. Hopefully, Dave can join us here shortly. But let's walk you through some of this stuff. And I just want to explain exactly what you're seeing right now. This was just released by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. And this was a press release that came from the Democrats just a short while ago. And the press release says that these are never before seen photos and videos from Epstein's Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands The production is in response to an oversight committee request to the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Justice for additional information to aid in the ongoing committee investigation of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. These newly released photos and videos can be found, I assume, from the Oversight Committee website via the Democrats here shortly. And they're also saying that they have received records from JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank. Those are the two big, powerful banks that have been tied to Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes. And the question is, what do those files say? Well, the oversight Democrats say they intend to release the files to the public, quote, after review in the days ahead. There's a quote here from ranking member Robert Garcia. It says, these new images are a disturbing look into the world of Jeffrey Epstein and his island. We are releasing these photos and videos to ensure public transparency in our investigation and to help piece together the full picture of Epstein's horrific crimes. We won't stop fighting until we deliver justice for the survivors. Ranking member Robert Garcia goes on to say it's time for Trump to release all the files now. And I'm going to be speaking with Robert Garcia later today. I'll bring that to you later today. But it's important that we show you these pictures and this video, because this is stunning stuff. This is stuff that the public has never seen before. And, you know, there's a pool right there, as you can see. You know, you only have to let your mind wander a little bit to imagine what was going on when Epstein was running this, basically this sex trafficking operation along with Ghislaine Maxwell. That he had guests on this island. There were underage girls on this island. And this is part of this massive, sweeping investigation into what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. And of course, Jeffrey Epstein being a close personal friend to Donald Trump for many years. The question is, of course, going to be asked, what does Trump know about any of this? And I believe he has insisted time and again, he's never been to this island. But, you know, the question is still hanging out there. Why is Donald Trump not releasing the Epstein files? As we saw in the last couple of weeks, there was incredible pressure put on the House of Representatives. The dam broke. Republicans joined with Democrats to pass a bill to compel the release of the Epstein files. You might remember the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, predicted that it was going to take forever to get through the Senate because there were going to be all these changes made by the Senate Republicans. And then the Senate Republicans said, nope, we're just going to let this thing sail on right through the Senate, which is exactly what took place. And then it was passed as a bill passed by both houses of Congress. And it went to Donald Trump's desk. Took a day or so for him to sign it. Then he signed it. And then you saw the Department of Justice have that dog and pony show with Pam Bondi, where she was starting to make some coded comments that sounded as though they were going to sit on these files a little bit longer because of pending investigations. They say they have pending investigations against Democrats. If that's the case, then there have to be some files that can be released, but they haven't released any of those files yet. So what the Oversight Committee Democrats are doing right now is they're starting to send some things out in dribs and drabs to say, you know, they have files too. And these files came from the Department of Justice from the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so the question becomes, you know, what did these photos tell us? You're seeing some, going through them right now. There are some pictures of a bedroom right here. And there are some bathroom photos. My understanding is there's a photo of a phone right here. And there are, as you can see in that picture, there are redactions on that phone list right there, on that list of contacts built into the phone, landline phone. There are names redacted there. The question becomes, what are those redactions? You can see a chalkboard here in one of the rooms at the Epstein compound, and it says power, deception, plants, disappear. We don't know what some of this stuff means. But again, there are redactions. There are words or names on this chalkboard that have been redacted. We don't know what that means, but seems to be pretty important stuff. And again, These are new photos, new videos just released of the Epstein Island. If you're tuning in right now on Substack and YouTube, this is live breaking coverage from the Jim Acosta Show. We've just obtained this information from the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. Again, here's some video of what looks like a pool and patio area at the Epstein compound. And an interesting backstory here. It sounds as though that the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee obtained this information from the Department of Justice for the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is, of course, a territory of the United States. This did not come from the U.S. Department of Justice. This is not because of the release of the Epstein files from the Department of Justice. These images were furnished by the Virgin Islands Department of Justice. And just to give you a little bit of a backstory as to what's been going on the last several months, investigators with the House Oversight Committee, the Democrats on the committee, led by Robert Garcia, they've been turning over every rock they can find to obtain information about what is going on with Jeffrey Epstein, and in particular, his connections to Donald Trump. We saw those emails that were released a few weeks ago that came from the Epstein estate. This, I guess, if you want to call it cache of evidence, came from the Department of Justice of the U.S. Virgin Islands. It sounds as though the Oversight Committee Democrats went to the Department of Justice for the U.S. Virgin Islands and said, could we please see some of this information? And of course, here are the emails that came out earlier in the fall that, of course, that pertain to Jeffrey Epstein and his conversations with Ghislaine Maxwell, talking about the dog that didn't bark. But here are those photos, and this one might be the most important one of them all. That picture right there of the chalkboard might be the most important image of all of the images to come out in this new release from the House Oversight Committee Democrats, because it is a chalkboard with a bunch of words on it. Power, deception. Power, deception. And then there are some words or names redacted there. I don't know what that means. We don't know what that means. Perhaps the investigators on the House Oversight Committee, they know what this means. And so this is all going to come out in time. The other thing we should mention for those who are just tuning in, because folks are tuning in waves here, the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee say they've also obtained records, financial records from J.P. Morgan and Deutsche Bank. Those are two very big, powerful banks that are connected to Jeffrey Epstein. And the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are saying that they're going to start releasing those records in the coming days. And so Donald Trump, he got a little bit of a break from Epstein Gate. He's had a few days to horse around and distract the public from the Epstein files with all sorts of his shenanigans. But the ghost of Jeffrey Epstein is still hanging over Donald Trump. The ghost of Jeffrey Epstein is still hot on the heels of Donald Trump. Donald Trump cannot escape Jeffrey Epstein as long as these images, as long as these photos don't have a backstory, don't have explanation. There are images from inside the house on the Epstein Island. You can see these weird, creepy pictures of men. Who are these? They're sort of paper mache sculptures, I guess you might say, of faces of men. Who are these men hanging on the wall in the Epstein compound? Are they friends of Jeffrey Epstein? I don't know. We don't know. It's going to take some close examination of these images, but very creepy, weird stuff. Again, I told you about that chalkboard. That chalkboard is in the back of that room with all of these easy chairs and so on. What the hell is going on in this room? I have no idea. There are bathrooms scattered throughout the compound with bathtubs. Lord knows what's been going on in any of these bathrooms and these bedrooms. But, and again, here's this phone for those of you who are just popping us on here. I don't know what these names mean, but there are redacted names on this phone. And at the bottom of the list of contacts on that phone, you can see it says Kitchen, JEE4, JEE3, JEE2, JEE1. JEE is Jeffrey Epstein. And so the question becomes, what does all of this mean? What does all of this mean? Who are those names on those? Could they be some of the girls that Epstein was trafficking with, along with Ghislaine Maxwell? We just don't know. What are the redacted words or names on the chalkboard there? We just don't know. We're going to get Dave Ehrenberg on the line here shortly. He's wrapping up something. He's going to be able to pop in here and talk to us about this. But again, this is just coming in from the House Oversight Committee, Democrats. I had Katie Fang on earlier. Katie Fang, of course, our beloved legal analyst, was explaining that these are very important images because it raises the question, what is the Department of Justice sitting on? What is the U.S. Justice Department sitting on? It sounds as though they're sitting on a truckload of damaging information. If this is just from the Virgin Islands Department of Justice, again, these creepy paper mache heads on the wall here in the Epstein compound with what looks like a dental office chair, assuming that's some sort of massage chair inside the Epstein compound on Epstein Island. Disturbing, gross stuff, no question about it. But again, these images were just released by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, and this is breaking news that we're bringing to you right now. The Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are clearly ratcheting up the pressure. They are turning up the temperature on Donald Trump, who has been single-handedly blocking the release of the Epstein files. A law has been passed. He has signed it into law that compels him to release this information. There's also video that was released by the Virgin Islands Department of Justice to the Oversight Committee Democrats. And you can see there's somebody with a camera there who's sort of going around the compound and showing you around the compound. You can see the U.S. Virgin Islands is a beautiful place. Epstein owned a tiny island or two. Katie Fang was saying he owned more than one island. Sounds like it was two islands. Beautiful islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands. You can see it was a sweeping compound that he owned there. And this is a look at a pool and a massive patio. I mean, it looks like a hotel almost that he was running, a small hotel that he was running on this island. To my understanding, I've seen journalists get on the outskirts of the island, on the outer perimeter of the island. I believe NBC did this, ABC did this a few years ago, where they got on a boat, went around the island and took pictures and stuff like that. I don't know if we've ever seen an inside look at the island. I don't know if we've ever seen a behind the scenes look at Epstein's compound before. And so what you're seeing right now is very important. It is very important. In the long story, the long, sad, tragic story of Jeffrey Epstein and what he did to these children. Remember, he did this to children, along with Ghislaine Maxwell, both convicted, put in prison for these crimes, longtime friend of Donald Trump. These kinds of images, as far as I can understand, have never been seen before. And so the question becomes, does this put some pressure on the Justice Department, on Donald Trump, who, of course, he thinks he's above the law. He was told by the Supreme Court he's above the law. Does he buckle to the pressure that is being put on him to finally release the Epstein files? Again, the video that you're looking at came from the Virgin Islands Department of Justice, did not come from the U.S. Department of Justice. And apparently a staffer or staffers with the Virgin Islands Department of Justice went around with a handy cam and walked around the estate and took this video. Incredible, incredible stuff. Let's just let it play a little bit. without my narration here. Let's just watch this. I mean, look at this. Let's bring in Dave Ehrenberg. Dave is with us. Dave, just to get you up to speed here, the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released photos and videos taken from inside the Epstein compound on Epstein Island. And these images were released by the House Oversight Committee Democrats about 30 minutes ago. There was a link on the email. If you follow that link, it opened up this cache of images. And Dave, you can, and I was just telling viewers a few moments ago that I don't recall, and maybe you can help us here, that there's ever been a release of images from inside the compound. I've seen journalists go outside on a boat and take pictures of the islands. Nothing like this.
No, I've never seen it before. And I didn't even know that this was in the possession of the Democrats. But that's why this thing is never going away, because until the files are released, it's going to be the drip, drip, drip. And this is a drip. Look at this. Oh, my gosh. How tacky. Oh, my goodness.
It's gross stuff. But in addition to that, Dave, there's a chalkboard here that we're going to show a close-up here. This, again, came from the Virgin Islands Department of Justice. The Oversight Dems got it from the DOJ for the Virgin Islands. Look at this chalkboard with these words redacted. And there's something that says in chalk, power, deception, weird stuff.
Music. Yeah. You know, that's why it's tough for anyone who's been on Epstein Island to say that they had no idea about underage girls and sex trafficking. I mean, that was sort of the purpose of Epstein Island. You're out there in an international area where I guess the Virgin Islands were looking the other way, and you just had freedom out there to do these nefarious, awful, evil things. And so, yeah, this is really telling. I mean, you can hear about it, but to actually see it is something else.
And this phone here, this was also released as part of this cache of images, and there are redactions on the phone. So there are names that are listed, but then there are some names that are redacted. They could be clients, they could be high-profile people. I don't know.
Yeah, why would you redact it unless it's really sensitive? It could be someone who's not been charged with a crime, who could be investigated as a co-conspirator, and they're redacting it for privacy's sake, or perhaps, you know, there were apparently court orders from some alleged co-conspirators, people who went to judges to say, my name may be in that file, you need to block it out, redact it. This was during the Ghislaine Maxwell investigation and trial. So perhaps this is part of it.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. And, you know, there are other rooms. There's a room that has what looks like a dental chair, although I think it's a massage chair, and some creepy paper mache heads on the wall. If we can show that image, I don't know what some of this, look at this room right here, Dave.
Oh, it's like a house of horrors. That looks like a torture chamber, right? I mean,
it's
like
disgusting.
from the movie Marathon Man or something. You know, you put someone in a dental chair and torture them. That's awful. What is that image on the left side? Oh, it's mask.
I don't know. Maybe these some of his buddies. Are these the frequent visitors, or are they just weird, creepy masks that they got on the island and they hung them on a wall? I don't know. But it's creepy House of Horrors type stuff. And then there's somebody with the Virgin Islands DOJ who went around with a camcorder and just sort of took video of different things. Here's a bedroom. There are several bedrooms. It looked like he was running like a small hotel. There are so many bathrooms and bedrooms here.
Well, you have a guy who is used to entertaining and wants to show off this beautiful, huge house. And that's why if he did have visitors, which he did in these bedrooms, it's impossible not to know what was going on. I mean, the house is big, but it's not segmented to an area where the girls were kept in just one wing of the house. They were there throughout the whole house. Everyone in the house should have known what was going on.
Yeah. And again, this one room with the chalkboard, to me, there's something going on with this chalkboard. There's a backstory here, and we got to get to the bottom of this. And it seems to me, Dave, that the Dems on the Oversight Committee are releasing this to put some pressure on Donald Trump, because this thing was passed, a couple of weeks ago, and signed, and they have not released the files. And this is information that came from the Virgin Islands Department of Justice. And so it says to me that what the DOJ has must be a truckload, absolute truckload of damaging, embarrassing information.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a rope-a-dope going on here, Jim, where the administration is trying to get the grand jury transcripts released, both in South Florida and in New York. They want the Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein grand jury transcripts released. But keep in mind, that's not the Epstein files. And so they're, I think, saying, hey, look, we're doing everything we can. We're working on it. But meanwhile, they're not releasing the Epstein files. And you don't need a law like the one that just passed to release the Epstein files. Trump can do it today if he wanted to.
That's right. But it says, Dave, the remarkable thing about this is, and thank you for confirming, I don't believe we've ever seen anything inside this island before.
No.
And it's disturbing.
Yeah, I've been following this case. Remember, it was my old office years before I got there. The state attorney's office had this prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein at the state level that led to that deal, that non-prosecution agreement that was agreed to by the feds. And I have never seen images of Epstein Island, any of these things. So I think this is the first time it's ever been released.
Wow. And I assume it says that there must be other damaging. The other thing that we should note, and I don't know if we had a chance to mention this while you've been on, Dave, is the Oversight Committee Democrats say they've also obtained files and records from Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan. And they say they intend to release those documents, what they say, in the days ahead after review. How significant could that be? Because follow the money is also part of this too.
Yes. And there were settlements with the banks to pay out because they were enabling a lot of this stuff. Like, why were they allowing all this money to go overseas into all these young women? They weren't asking questions. They have obligations to the federal government to do suspicious activity reports and currency transaction reports. And apparently reports were not made. So that's going to be very telling. Keep in mind, the reason why we're seeing this is because the Democrats decided to subpoena the Epstein estate. They asked for documents, which they got. And then also now the banks. This is separate from the Epstein files, which contains a treasure trove. So as long as those are not going to be released, the Democrats on the committee are going to continue to go outside the DOJ and find the stuff for themselves.
Yeah. And they're finding stuff. There's no question about it. This was, this is some really disturbing stuff, what we're seeing from the House Oversight Committee Democrats. Well, Dave, thanks for hopping on. What's the significance of this, do you think, that we're seeing this today?
Well, I think the significance really is that this, again, puts this issue front and center. Trump has, since the bill passed, has been able to push this aside. We're going to get to it. It's going to happen in a few weeks. We're working on the grand jury transcripts, but that's not the Epstein files. And with all the controversy about Pete Hegseth and the double tap, it's pushed Epstein off the headlines. What this does, I think, is bring it back to remind people that this is still out there. There's still things we don't know that we need to know. We still don't know who all the co-conspirators are. That's what's in the Epstein files. And to me, Jim, the biggest question for me out there is not just who the co-conspirators are, but how did Epstein make his money? You had a guy who was a middling financial talent who all of a sudden got billions of dollars at his disposal. Doing what? Was it blackmail? Was it just tax advice? We still don't know.
Yeah, we don't know the whole backstory. And yes, we're focusing in part on this very close relationship that Jeffrey Epstein had with Donald Trump for many, many years. But Jeffrey Epstein had relationships with a lot of people, a lot of high profile movers and shakers with big money involved. And there's been a clear cut effort to suppress this information for many, many years. And it's coming out. It's just coming out in dribs and drabs. Seems like Donald Trump, he can try to hold back the tidal wave with his tiny orange hands, but it's just not going to be able to do it much longer.
Yeah, and there's orange in that room there. That mask is an orange dude on the left, and then it looks like lots of orange faces on the wall and the orange chair. So yeah, That's the theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, I'm glad you're focusing on this. I think this is the story that will not go away. And like I said, I think it's better if Trump had just said, we're releasing everything. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. But now the drip, drip, drip can be devastating.
Devastating. Absolutely. Dave, thanks for jumping on. Really appreciate it. Good to see you.
Hey, Jim, thank you. Can I plug my Substack, please?
Please plug it. Plug away, as always.
Dave Ehrenberg. Yeah, thank you, Jim. Whenever I go on your show, I get lots of new subscribers. Please check me out, Dave Ehrenberg, aka the Florida Lawman. I'm on Substack now. And Jim, thanks for having me on.
You bet, as always. And if I forget the plug, you always do the plug. There's no shame in this. Dave, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And, we've had a lot of viewers here watching us here on this live coverage on Substack and on YouTube. So always appreciate everybody tuning in, however you get us. And just remember, we're on the case. I get these messages every now and then. Jim, don't forget the Epstein files. Jim, you've gone a few days without talking about the Epstein file. We're on the case. We've been on the case since July when they tried to sweep this under the rug. Remember the DOJ memo that came out in July of this year, where they said there's nothing to see here. There's nothing going on here. We're just going to move on. Remember when the U.S. Department of Justice tried to pull a fast one on the American people last July with this nonsense? And look at what has come out since then. Look at the effort, the Herculean effort. Not that we should attach the word Herculean to Donald Trump, but look at the effort pulling out all the stops to suppress and cover up the Epstein files. That's why I call this Epstein Gate. It is a cover-up. It is a massive government cover-up that has been perpetrated by the President of the United States and the United States Department of Justice. And it's only because of the Democrats in the House of Representatives that we're seeing any of this. Robert Garcia, the Democrats on that committee, Ro Khanna, and Tom Massey, I should say, the Republican congressman from Kentucky. We saw Marjorie Taylor Greene join in with him in recent weeks to force the release of the Epstein files. But keep in mind, what you're seeing released today is not from the Department of Justice Epstein files. It's from the Virgin Islands Department of Justice Epstein files. So there are lots of different troves of information that have still not been seen by the public. There was the Epstein estate documents that we saw earlier this fall, where Jeffrey Epstein says to Ghislaine Maxwell more than 10 years ago that Donald Trump is the dog that hasn't barked. And then we saw all of those emails that had Donald Trump's name on them over and over and over again. And then they passed the law that says they have to release the Epstein files. And then Donald Trump and Pam Bondi are still sitting on the Epstein files, which did not release to the public despite a law of Congress. When the expression, it'll take an act of Congress to blah, blah, blah. Well, they had an act of Congress and they still haven't released blah, blah, blah. And so the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are saying, well, we're just going to keep doing this thing where we release these things in dribs and drabs. And this video, as Dave Ehrenberg was saying a few moments ago, I don't know if somebody can chime in and tell me whether or not this has been seen before, please let me know. I do not believe this has ever been seen before. This video from inside the Epstein compound. It's now been released to the public. The no trespassing sign. Look at that. Pictures from inside these bedrooms. The question has to be asked, Donald Trump, why are you sitting on these files? What are you trying to hide? What is going on here? Why can't we get to the bottom of this? Look at this weird room with the dental chair and the faces on the wall. It's time for this badness to end. It's time for this crazy cover-up to end. And let these victims have some peace. Let these victims have some justice. Let these victims have some truth. Let the truth come out. I want to thank everybody for tuning into this special live coverage of the Jim Acosta Show. New Epstein video and photos released by the House Oversight Committee Democrats. Remember, This is not released by the Republicans are in charge of that committee. They ain't putting this stuff out. James Comer, the chairman of that committee, he ain't putting this stuff out. It's the Democrats on the committee releasing this information. What does that tell you? It tells me the cover-up continues. Ladies and gentlemen, the cover-up continues. And this information is going to come out. You can only hold up the tidal wave with that tiny orange hand for so long. The truth is going to come out like a tidal wave. Like a tidal wave. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. I'll see you later on this afternoon at 4 o'clock Eastern with our regular edition. See you soon.